Hello and welcome back to the Educated Column Snap channel. How are you doing? So I wanted to add some decks for you guys to try for the new evolution meta, just going through it. I think there's a lot of flexibility kind of in the game right now. The one constant is that a lot of people are running high evolutionary, and high evolutionary is very flexible that you can put it into everything. So there's a lot of variations of high evolutionary decks. But I do want to just kind of discuss some of the decks you can play. These aren't necessarily always going to be like top 10 in the game. I think it's probably like some variation, 10 different variations of high evolutionary or Galactus, it's just like, yeah. But overall, let's just get right into it. Let's begin. So, first thing we do want to talk about is just the high presence of evolutionary in the meta. There's quite a bit of ways to play it, and that gives it a lot of presence. So when looking at the like stats and stuff, it's kind of not super usable because it's like, oh, all the best, like the top 20 is all evolutionary. It's like, yeah, it's not really true, right? Like they're all like facets of the same thing. But this is like the vibe, some of the vibes. We're gonna go through some instances of high evolutionary, but a lot of times it's just some type of, you're running, 4 or 5 cards or with high evolutionary, and then you're running the Hulk, Abomination, end game. That's usually your win condition, and then you have Cyclops really and the thing to kind of give you those negative procs so that you can put Abomination for cheap. So these are like pretty standard lists. They do pretty well, but this is the vibe. Scorpion has really jumped up for Abomination tools. And Luke Cage was like a good counter, but a lot of people aren't running Luke Cage because there's enough variability that you're not always going to take advantage of the Luke Cage. And it is a downside to play it compared to like a Jeff or a Lizard or really anything else. So it's not super common you're seeing a ton of Luke Cages. So a lot of the deck lists have decided, hey, I'm just not gonna run it if I see a mirror matchup, then I'll be careful and I'll keep that in mind. Maybe play the Abomination early, but in a lot of matchups, I'm not seeing it, so I don't have to really deal with that. So that's really been the evolution of that in particular. But this is just like the floor to kind of show you like this is what evolutionary a lot of people are doing. There are more aspects of evolutionary. I think something people really like is lockdown in evolutionary. So this one is definitely not focused on a lot of the early game. The early game is more Nebula, Daredevil, like control tools, and the end game is really where the evolutionary part shows up. So you're really using Nebula, Storm, Spider-Man to really lock down a lane, and then have Professor X or the Hulk to really shut down another lane. So it's pretty semi-tempo driven that you need to win one lane before your Hulk and somewhat can win the other. So the downside of this one is that people are getting wise to it. So you're like Storm Cyclops lanes aren't necessarily always giving you the win. And a lot of people are running Doctor Doom right now because it's a good matchup. So it's not guaranteed that though that Nebula Cyclops will win, but it's pretty safe to say, oh, it can do pretty well. So this is one aspect of the meta that people are taking advantage of. So it's something you can definitely try. The other aspect is like just big power. So this is something I really was playing early, and I think that people seeing how well it's doing has led a lot of other people to really try this. So this is more of like no Thanos Lockjaw. A lot of people were thinking Thanos Lockjaw would be like the main Lockjaw piece, but I really wasn't too happy with it. I wanted to do something just to have big stats, and I think that's really how the meta shaped up for Lockjaw in general right now. Is just without the Thanos, just played with Thor and Jane, and then you get to play the Hulk, get to play Infinite. So I normally run Dracula in this list, but I've swapped out the Dracula for Shang-Chi. Just think Shang-Chi right now is really powerful, and if you can play Shang-Chi in a lot of your decks, you're probably going to have a big advantage here. So this lets you hit into other mirror matches and have that edge where people think, oh, their Hulk or whatever is going to win them. You can win, you can surprise them with the Shang-Chi. And it's just like there's a lot of targets into Shang-Chi right now with high evolutionary being so prevalent. Abomination and stuff is also a really nice hit. So really like the um the Shang-Chi alternative. So Dracula, the downside of it a little bit is like sometimes you are relying on like a 50-50 to win the game or something. Your percentages aren't super good. There's like a lot of hidden fear though with Dracula where a lot of people are always thinking, oh, it's gonna hit the 20 power or the 14 power or something like that. It's not always the case, and you know, those are like really scary losses. Where Shang-Chi is pretty consistent, you know it's gonna work out when it does. So you're reducing that consistency and putting in a powerful tech option. So that's the idea here with the Shang-Chi alternative instead of the Dracula. But I think like overall, whatever variation, it's still pretty strong. So this is just another way of playing High Evolutionary. But I just wanted to cover the High Evolutionary decks at the beginning before we go into other things. So next thing we're going to be talking about is bounce. So bounce is, I think, very, very strong, very, very powerful. It's just that some people have the issue of wave can counter bounce, Killmonger can counter bounce. So the idea here with this one is that you have Invisible Woman. Invisible Woman allows you to have other ways to take advantage of the bounce archetype without really being all that weak to wave and Killmonger. So you play Invisible Woman, you can play Kitty Pryde into that, and now it won't go back to your hand until the end of the game, and it also protects you from Killmonger. Same thing with Hit Monkey. You can play Hit Monkey into the Invisible Woman early, and on the final turn, that's when it's gonna get the proc. So you can get like, you can play a Hit Monkey while also playing like a ton of things in the final turn, and you don't have to spend the 2 mana in the last turn to take advantage of all the Hit Monkey procs. So it just allows you to have more flexibility into those matchups, and then you have the tech tools of Super Skull and Iron Man. Super Skull has good matchups into a lot of things people want to play, and Iron Man just lets you reach into the stars. So sometimes people think that their Hulk lane is gonna like beat Mount's lane by itself, but if you have a 0 or 3 power upgraded Iron Man, that can really contest some of the late game scenario. So it just gives you more flexibility to play into matchups which are traditionally hard. So this is just like the evolution of bounce, and it has a lot of good things going for it. So I kind of like how it works and how it pilots. So that's something you can try. You can still play original bounce if you don't want to do all the fancy stuff. This is definitely a little bit harder to run, but I think the advantages do make sense for it. So pretty happy with this one. Next up, we have another like variation of bounce, but it's more Sera Control S. So Sera Control allows you to play the Shang-Chi, allows you to play the Enchantress, allows you to play the Killmonger, and those 3 cards are really nice in the meta right now. I just think Shang-Chi, if you can put in every deck or any deck, it's really good because a lot of people are just playing Hulk, a lot of people are playing Abomination, a lot of people are playing Lockjaw. So you just have this way of dealing with that matchup. And then Killmonger, a lot of people are playing Bounce, so the Killmonger can just be a nice tool into that particular scenario. So Sera just allows you to go a little bit slower. There's less wave right now. I'm not saying there's 0 wave, but it is significantly less wave since a lot of people are doing other things, or just, you know, it's not as dominating as it used to be maybe like a week and a half ago. So you can definitely do more things with Sera these days, and then you just have more like traditional bounce tools, and with the Hit Monkey, with the Kitty Pryde, with the Sentinel, with, you know, on the last turn if you want to. So that's just another way of piloting the deck that I think has a lot of good pieces. So this is something else you can play. Next thing we have is Iron Lad Patriot. So the reason for Patriot Iron Lad is, I do think Iron Lad or Patriot normally is okay, but not like super unique, and a lot of people know what you're gonna do. So if you're gonna win, you're not winning that much. Here you have more like flexibility in what you want to do, and your payouts are generally as good as the regular Patriot deck, and you have those like crazy hits, right? You can hit your Iron Lad, hit the Brood, you can hit the Doom, it can hit the Onslaught, you can Marvel. So there's a lot of really nice hits there. And then the Invisible Woman gives you that surprise factor where they're not exactly knowing what you're gonna do in the final turn. So it's just a more, I guess, thought heavy Patriot list, even though like maybe you don't want to, maybe you play Patriot because it's not thought heavy, right? Like I could see that argument there, but this one does require a little bit of thinking and making sure that you are planning ahead for your opponents, where the regular Patriot is like kind of jam and hope it works out. So that's something you can try here. And so next thing with Iron Lad is Galactus. Obviously you can play Galactus without Iron Lad at all, right? And I think everyone is familiar with that deck list, but here you can add Iron Lad to your Galactus archetype, and that can allow you to do some things and have some more options that you weren't able to have before, because, you know, obviously Iron Lad can hit Galactus itself, which could be pretty cool, but you can also hit the wave early, you can also hit the Electro early, you can also hit the Darker Octopus. That can also be pretty cool to have two of them, two octopuses down if you need them, and things like that. So this just allows you to have some like crazier angles to win the game compared to like only one dimensional. You need to hit this into this, right? You have more options. So let's say you need the wave, you don't have the wave in your hand, you can say, oh, let me try to see if I get the wave here or the electro here, and then go. So it's more options to do what you want to do. So that's the idea here. It's not a very different Galactus deck. There's nothing like super duper fancy or unique here. It's just like, hey, Lad can hit some crazy things. So that's the idea with this one. Next up, we have discard. So discard is pretty normal, pretty consistent. I wouldn't say this is like a super unique list, but I just think discard is pretty powerful. Generally, it's always been pretty powerful, but as long as you know what you're doing, the amount of pressure you can put out on a discard deck is like really, really high. And almost every season, I feel like I have to say this. Oh, discard's still good. You know, it's like, I don't know. I guess it's the monthly, hey, discard is pretty sick. But I just want to talk about it since I made the series 4 or 5 video and discard was pretty high with Modork being recommended, right? This is the type of deck I'm really talking about where you can take advantage of Modork's ability to do a lot of damage. But generally, like, discard is all the same, right? Like it doesn't really change too much in the cards using, maybe one or two depending on the meta. Sometimes I know Storm was like pretty popular a while back, but you really see less of it now since everyone else is playing Storm. And if other people are playing Storm, you don't have to play Storm yourself. But overall, you know, discard spiel. Next up, we have Wong Reveal. So the reason why I have this one in is because Cosmo's just not popular right now. You really rarely see Cosmo. It just doesn't feel like it's that impactful a lot of the time. So because of that, things like Wong can take advantage of that lack of Cosmo. I think any Wong deck that really has other win conditions besides playing Wong is generally going to be pretty good because you can just take advantage of no one having Cosmo or Arrow or really anything. No one's playing Magneto, really. You can see it sometimes in some ramp, but even then it's like sometimes too late to care. So anyways, I just think Wong is generally solid here if you can get it to go off, and it should be able to. A lot of your hits are really nice, and it's just a nice tempo-y deck that has some advantages for you. So there's definitely something to look at if you want to play Wong and you're like, oh, I just think right now is a good time to play any other Wong decks with the lack of Cosmo. And then next up we have Darkhawk Dino. So Darkhawk Dino I think is pretty good just because the pieces are just generally good. Moon Girl into Dino is just still a strong option. And then Darkhawk, if you have the other pieces around it, also generally strong. So we've seen like this do well in tournaments, even though it doesn't run like too many expensive cards. And it just goes to show you, like, as long as you have some options, you can do well. And the Shang-Chi, once again, right, you get to play Shang-Chi. You also get to play Cosmo, which I was saying no one's playing Cosmo, but this deck is like, no one's really playing a ton of this, I would say. So this isn't like super popular, oh my god, you know, everyone's running this. But I do think you do get to play some tech cards which are pretty nice into the meta. So generally, I could also say, like, you could switch Cosmo. Like, you know, Cosmo's not super duper necessary, let's be real, but Shang-Chi for sure is like thumbs up for you. So I can see it. Like, Cosmo could be like Luke Cage if you really need that, or Jeff, of course. But anyways, that's another option to do. And then the last one I do have is Destroy deck. So I think the main advantage of this particular list is you have Shang-Chi and Null, and that is really nice because a lot of people are playing big things, right? So what you can do is you destroy their big thing, and then you can win another lane by using their big card, right? You hit their Hulk, you hit their Infinite, you hit their, you know, whatever, their in Abomination, whatever you want, right? You get to hit their things, and then you get to play a nice final turn. The one, like, I guess, issue in a sense is that you do need your cards to have the right, like, flow. Like, you need the Deadpool early, you need the Bucky early, you need the you know, your early game ramp, quote unquote, early, so that your late game you're not like using your destroy tools in the final turns when you need to play your Null or something like that, or your Shang-Chi or something like that. So you do need the order to be right, but when it is right, it feels pretty good, and there's just a lot of good matchups with this right now, with a lot of destroying targets for the Shang-Chi and such. So that's the real benefit of this deck. I'm not saying like it's super crazy strong, but into the right matchups, you can definitely do a lot of work there. And generally, this does decently into Galactus, which is always nice, right? Since you have your own Null and you have the death yourself, right? You can kind of do what the Galactus wants to do. So that's also just another benefit there. But overall, like those are the 10 lists I wanted to show. I didn't really want to have like 10 high evolutionary decks, which I definitely could have. But I just wanted to have like, here are some lists you can try, and maybe you'll be interested in a couple of them. So overall, that's all I got for you. I just wanted to have a quickish video, even though my videos are never quick, unfortunately. But yeah, it's something like that. Here's some decks to try. Maybe one of them will inspire you. Always get the comment that, hey, I can't make any of these lists every time, no matter what. Just like, hey guys, here's 10 lists, and I can't make any of them. I'm missing a card. I don't know. Like, depending on the card, you can always like find a replacement. But like, if you're missing like Null here, yeah, you can't play this, right? So there's definitely some issues. Like maybe the Dino deck, I guess, would be the best one, right? But if you have Doom, like just get Doom or so. I guess if you don't have Mystique, it's like yeah, whatever. Or Zabu, I guess you don't have Zabu. Yeah, but alright. Anyways, let's not go into it. That's what I wanted to show you guys today. Take care of yourself. I want for us today, and I'll see you in the next one.
Once you watch him, you won't go back.